Hi, welcome to Studio 14. I'm Ginny Sawyer, and with me today is Emily Allen, our Community Liaison for the City of Fort Collins. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Ginny. How are you?
I'm doing well. Community Liaison, what is that?
Sounds fancy, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, so the Community Liaison role started in 2001 between the City of Fort Collins and Colorado State University. And the role is basically all about communication between the two. So communication between students and long-term residents, between projects and just the basic needs of the community where students are involved and living in the neighborhoods.
Because we do have a lot of overlap there.
We have a lot of overlap.
I know. So do other communities have similar things?
So as far as I know, the only position that is truly shared between the two entities is ours.
Wow, that's awesome.
Super cool.
So how long have you been running it?
I've been doing it just under 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Good long time. And so what are some of the real focuses? I mean, I know you're talking about communicating between and sharing, but what's a tangible sort of example?
Sure. I do a lot of national presentations on the work we have, and oftentimes I'll start with the presentation asking the audience members how many of them know the codes and ordinances of where they grew up. So not thinking of their current place, but where they grew up as kids, right? Not a single person ever raises their hands. Not a single one. Yeah.
Because why would you?
Why would you? Yeah. And I always say, well, let's put that in the college environment. We then have really high expectations of our students to come to a place where most likely they're going to spend 4 to 6 years and to know all of it. Right? I talk to so many neighbors and they're like, well, why don't the students know this? And why don't the students know that?
They leave their trash cans out. They're not mowing their grass.
Right. Yeah. And most of the time, a lot of us don't know the local codes and ordinances.
Right.
So I like to say that I spend time educating people in that area. A lot of them being CSU students, but even when I'm out in the neighborhoods, I'm oftentimes educating our neighbors on what the local codes and ordinances are.
Who may not know.
Yeah, so that's how I start things off, and I think it gets people in the mindset of, wow, we do really have high expectations on college students and what we want them to be doing and understanding.
Or really any young people who may be living in a neighborhood for the first time.
Yeah.
Because new homeowners too. I live in a neighborhood and I get some folks that seem really young and it is their first time in a house or in a neighborhood, and we definitely have norms and expectations.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, a couple of different ways. So I think that the City of Fort Collins and any college town is unique in that we're a training ground. So what makes the town and gown relationship so cool is that the city and the college students have this opportunity to work together to understand what it means to be a good neighbor now and then wherever they decide to live. So a lot of the stuff that I do is around passive education. So everything from really what's on the table.
All these things. I'm sure all these things are online.
All of these things.
Decks of cards. Yeah.
I'll point out these two. These are probably two of our biggest resources. So one of which, this is the Your Actions Have Impact microfiber. And we have every single student living within the residence halls, so just under 6,000 of them who get this passive message. And what it's saying is basically to be a good neighbor both on and off campus.
Right.
So passively, we're telling them, hey, we have these expectations of you. You just came to Fort Collins. You're living on campus, but we want you to know that whether you are on or off campus, you're going to be held responsible for your behaviors.
People are going to point at you and say, you're a CSU student, and stereotype all 28,000 students based on what you're doing.
Yeah, and not only that, but the university takes it seriously. They want the students to know that their actions have impact, right? They're representing Rams, whether they're in the city of Fort Collins, whether they're down at Denver at the big game, or if they're studying abroad. I ask students in the workshops I say to them, how many of you own a piece of CSU gear? And all of them raise their hands. And I'm like, you're constantly representing the university and you don't even realize it.
Right.
And so through our code of conduct, students are actually held responsible for their behaviors on and off campus. So we passively start with that simple message to around 6,000 students in the beginning of the year.
Right. So I do want to come back to the holding them accountable. But first, show me your other handbook there. Oh,
so,
nice. Yeah.
The next one. Oh, and I want to point out that all of this stuff that we are showing you was designed by our student graphic designers.
Oh,
so
fun.
It's nice to have students behind it. So this handbook is given to all, again, students living within the residence halls as well as transfer students.
Okay.
And this is everything that I ever talk about in any programming communication I do. It's the...
and it's about 100 pages. No, it's pretty long.
It feels pretty long. Yeah. So it talks from how to find housing, right? So understanding where to look for housing rental standards, that they're living in a safe space, talking about roommate stuff, who are you thinking about living with? Maybe the person you know.
You're going to do your groceries together.
Yes. I like to say that some of the best roommate conflicts are over expensive, Chobani yogurt. So
Yeah. Very true.
So it talks about all of that stuff, our codes and ordinances, all the way through, some resources in the back about subleasing and going through and checking to make sure that your rental is in good health. So.
And good stuff like meet your neighbor?
Yes, we have a whole section on literally getting to know your neighbor.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so another thing that we do, so that's the passive education. A more active piece that we've started to do recently, so one of our newest exciting programs within the last 2 years, we've spent a lot of time getting into the academic space.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, what we were finding with our programs is that students are overprogrammed. We like to have them come to 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock programs. And
right.
They're tired and they're overprogrammed.
And they want to study.
They want to study, right? Or they want to pick just the really top things that they want to come to.
Right.
Maybe they're on a sports team or they're actively involved in our hundreds of student organizations that they have. So what we found is a little way to get into the academic setting through a lot of our first year seminar classes. And so we now offer a class called Rams Around the Fort.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's this workshop where we basically take that handbook and bring it to life. So it's a super interactive workshop. We now partner with Fort Collins Police, so it's co-presented with Fort Collins Police.
Oh, nice for them to get interaction one-on-one time with police services.
Yeah. And it's proactive, right? These students aren't living out in the community yet, so they really don't have much encounter with Fort Collins Police. So it's a way for the police to start interacting with our students in a more proactive, positive manner of, hey, this is who we are, this is what we're about, this is why we do what we do, this is why loud parties are a concern for our entire, city. So they really get to talk about that proactively.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, and including the academic piece, I could see people in the community or folks thinking that is CSU's job. Your students, your responsibility, you're bringing them here. So what's beneficial about having the city partner in that and the city commitment behind this programming and education?
Yeah, I go back to that whole piece of about it being a training ground. So I think that the city has a unique opportunity to really start to incorporate students into the environment. I don't think it's that whole chicken or egg. What's nice about our community is that CSU and the city really started to develop together. I mean, back in the 1800s,
800 years ago.
Yeah, they really started to grow up together. So what's also interesting is back in the day, yes, the campus environment, there were almost more students than there were residents. And now today, there's significantly more residents than there are students. And so the city has this opportunity to get them involved. Last year, I want to say the statistic was CSU students donated 88,000 hours of community service. So, I mean, huge
Back to our
numbers.
Community, that is huge.
Yes, that's huge. Right? So how can the city capitalize on just the people power, right? Getting them to the parks and trails and helping them maintain them. How do they get into internships with all of our amazing businesses within the community? There's just so many different ways that we can take these students and incorporate them. CSU is the land-grant research institution within the state of Colorado. There's incredible research happening on our campus. And so how can they be partnering to do that and giving students an opportunity to learn and grow in the lab and then within the community?
Right. Yeah. So what role can a long-term neighbor play in this whole dynamic?
So whenever I talk to long-term neighbors, I share with them, I ask them, how long have you been here? And some will share 5 years, some will share 40, 50 years, and I like to get their story. What has the neighborhood been like? Talk to me about when you first got here. Let me know what it is now. And I also challenge a little to say that it's not good or bad. Today's students are just different, right? Just like they're different. I would assume that neighbor is very different than what they were 40 years ago.
If they were in the neighborhood when it was built. Neighborhoods transition. Small kids grow up, college, move, turn it back around.
Right. So I asked the neighbor to play a role in helping shape who these students can be within their neighborhood. So a part of their role is letting them know their new neighbors. So it could be students, it could be non-students.
Right.
We have a high rental community within the city of Fort Collins.
Almost 50%.
Right.
Yeah.
So I tell them, whether they're students or not, let them know about neighborhood expectations. Maybe there isn't an HOA, but maybe there's some type of rules and regulations that the long-term residents know and live by that they can share with the neighbors.
Or just real neighborhood norms.
Yes.
Like maybe we potluck once a month here. Right. Maybe we are very careful not to leave our trash cans out, whatever it is.
Right, absolutely. And to establish the relationship early on with them, that way there's the mutual benefit of being neighbors. So, for instance, our students are here and most of them are really happy to help shovel, pull in the newspapers, pull in the trash cans. So working out an arrangement to say, hey, if you shovel my walk during this time, I'll have you during, the breaks. So fall break, winter break, spring break, which I love to joke that it seriously always snows during those breaks. Right. And I tell students that, they need to get that taken care of. So shovel your neighbor's walk, they'll shovel yours while you're gone. Exactly.
Yeah. That is good. And that's just a stronger, healthier neighborhood.
It is.
All the way around.
Absolutely.
Knowing who's there.
Yeah.
Well, so let's go back to some of that there are consequences, your actions have impacts. Yep. Certainly we know that students do get noise tickets, things do happen off campus. Even if every student had one learning opportunity that was that negative experience, that's a lot of impact.
Yeah.
And so what happens when that happens?
Sure. So one, in talking about the statistics in general, a very few small number of students actually receive the citations as far as the whole student body. So if we have roughly 23 to 25,000 students living, out in the Fort Collins community or area, I don't know what the stats are, but it's very, very, very small as far as how many. But
that's not necessarily because police are just giving warnings and not writing tickets.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
It's not because it's just the overall whole picture.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the police would tell you the exact same, right? So of the non-students, it's a very small number of people doing most of the issues.
Right.
This is across the board.
There's something that's called the law of the 10% or whatever.
Exactly.
80% of the problem. Okay.
Right. So most of our students are making outstanding decisions. And honestly, a part of being an 18 to 25-year-old is making mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
So they're going to host parties and they're going to do things that get them into a little bit of trouble.
They're going to put it on Facebook and wish they hadn't.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay.
Also, part of Rams Around the Fort is the social media component and telling them not to do that. So we add that to the education. So when they do get citations, so they obviously come through the whole process that we have here within the city, so within municipal courts and coming through the court systems.
Right, okay.
The court systems have an outstanding partnership with our Student Resolution Center. So our Student Resolution Center has two umbrellas, basically. So a conflict resolution side and then a student conduct side.
So even though they get a ticket from the city, CSU is notified of that ticket?
Yep, they're notified of all of them. So if there's a citation written, all of those names get put through our system and we establish if they're a student, they're coming through the system. And this means a first-year student to a PhD student.
Okay.
Everybody's coming through the system.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So due process happens, a letter is sent, they get notified, and then they need to come in for a hearing. They meet with the hearing officer. So university hearing officer talks to them. What I love about this is there's accountability on the city side, but there's accountability at the university in a manner where they're actually talking through the situation, right? There's a staff member sitting across the table from them saying,
what happened?
Right, help me understand what happened.
Yeah.
And to really challenge back to say, okay, that's the scenario, why don't we just expand it a little bigger? What actually happened? Or to say, Have you thought about the impact of the neighbor down the street? Or have you thought about how this impacts your roommate who is trying to study? I mean, they really get them to think about a much bigger picture and the ripple effects that their behaviors have. So,
which is more lasting than paying $100 fine or $500
really
fine
is.
or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's consequences at the university. So they need to attend certain classes. If it's related to drugs or alcohol, they have to come through a whole program on that side.
Oh, okay.
If they're under the age of 21 and held responsible for it, for a drug or alcohol issue, a letter gets sent home to the parents.
Oh,
so
okay.
There's a lot of layers
There's
of
some
accountability.
consequences.
There are, yeah.
So I've heard of these impact panels too.
Yeah.
What triggers that, and
Sure.
who were on those panels?
Yeah. So another reason why I love the Student Resolution Center is how customized these end results are, these sanctions are, one of which is a neighborhood impact panel. So that's something that I help co-facilitate. And we work with various neighbors who I work with out in the neighborhoods, neighbors that can really speak to living in a highly dense student populated area.
Sure.
So we talk to these neighbors and they literally come into a panel of about probably 4 or 5 neighbors with 4 or 5 students, so 10 people, plus the facilitators, and we talk about the situations that brought the students there. So it could either be because the students received a second noise citation.
Oh, okay.
Maybe the students were intoxicated and entered the wrong home.
That happens.
Yep, it does.
Lock your doors.
Exactly. for other reasons than
Yeah,
that, but lots of reasons. So we talk about, open it up for discussion, and the neighbors have an incredible ability to connect with the student on a way that I can't as an administrator, right? They're living there. They get to tell the student, and it's not typically the people who had the impact done to them, so it's just these other neighbors. But
They're not emotionally involved in that particular case.
Right.
Okay.
But they've probably, or they have experienced a lot of it.
Yeah.
So we've had neighbors share times where, a drunk college student was pounding on the door asking to be let in.
That's scary.
Super scary.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So to watch these students go through this, the way I set it up, it may seem intimidating, but that environment is an environment where students just get to talking, and there's apologies being made, and there's apologies being made back to the neighbors that they've then impacted. The students then share the stories with their fellow students. So some of the biggest, the best outcomes have been from the neighborhood impact panels and other impact panels that we have. Yeah. There's a downtown impact panel of downtown behaviors that students have in that area. So, there's a game day one for when they're out at Hughes and other games. It's endless. So
that's good. So CSU is keeping good tabs on their students, for sure.
Yep.
And with, again, that learning outcome, not to punish, but
to educate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah. And most of our students never come back through the system. I want that to be known, that once a student really comes through, right, and have done the things that we just talked about, so yes, they may have court stuff, but when they come through our system, we very rarely ever see them again, which I think speaks a lot to their ability to learn and grow from the situation and our ability to, help them repair harm.
Only the effectiveness of the programs, which is great.
Right.
So I'm sure this is a very dynamic world that you live in, and I know you're creative because I know you. So, what's new and upcoming? Like, what new programs? What do you try to change? I'm sure some things are solid and they'll stay there forever, but.
Yeah, so our solid ones, community welcome that we do the first Wednesday of every August, partnering with police and students and staff to go out there. We do fall cleanup within the first weekend in November, helping neighbors who need help getting their homes ready for the fall and winter season. So those are our really staple programs. The most exciting stuff that we have, so we've got the Rams Around the Fort. Getting in the academic space has been amazing in what we've been able to do and how much the students have shared that this is a value to our academic experience. I can't stress that enough. When students are telling us that all of this information helps shape them as a student and how they are in our community is huge.
Well, and it's so practical. I'm not going to say algebra and physics isn't practical, but to really...
Not sure when I use those right now.
To really understand what it is to be a valuable community member and add to is...
Sure. Yeah. So our most exciting thing, which hasn't even started yet, but it's coming.
Yes.
And you are helping me with it.
I'm acting surprised, but let's talk about it.
I love it. We, through the community liaison programming, we are creating a brand new partnership with our Key communities. So Key is an office on campus that really helps tie in students that are coming to Colorado State University from underrepresented populations. So low income, first gen, minority students. Mm-hmm. So they're coming in, and we have found the more we build them up and the more we support them and then put them in an environment where they're together, being able to talk about things, the more they tend to succeed, and they stay at CSU. They go on to graduate in wonderful numbers. So this has been definitely a top priority within the city of Fort Collins to work with underrepresented populations, and it has always been at Colorado State University. So we are starting a brand new community within the residence halls where we're going to have roughly 38 Key students coming through what we're calling CityWorks EDU. Mm-hmm. So it's like a university version of CityWorks. So
101, our 8-week program for citizens, where we teach them all different aspects of city functions.
Yep. So how great, right? We're talking about that training ground again. Yeah. We're talking about students. I would guess that you probably didn't go through it when you were younger, even though you grew up in Fort Collins. I knew nothing about Port Washington and New York. So we have this opportunity to take these 38 students and have them explore the city. We're going to take transport to and from the locations. We're going to go check out traffics and Fort Collins Police Services and water stuff. And we're going to talk to the city manager's office. We're going to just literally tour the city and really dive in to how the city works.
And local government. What I am most excited about, there are a lot of exciting things about this program. The city offers so many different careers. Like, it's a whole career exploration kind of thing. Because we have so many different skill sets and job professions within here.
Right.
So.
And a lot of our residential communities within CSU are very specific, right? So they have specific majors that are coming into them. What's cool about this one is it's interdisciplinary. We have students across the board. I actually just got to peek at some of our students yesterday, and there's zoology, communications, there's construction management, there's undeclared. We have students all across the board who are just interested in potentially a job or a future within the city, local nonprofit work.
Or learning how to influence.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you influence your local government? Right.
Yeah. Maybe I'll learn more about that. It'll be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. This is all so fantastic. Where on the web could people find more information?
Sure. So either the ocl.colostate.edu or our city website. If you just type in community liaison, you will pop up all of these different programs.
Okay. And a lot of the materials are on there as well?
They are all on there, every single one.
Fantastic. And your contact information?
It is.
Perfect. Yeah. There you have it. So much in a quick soundbite, but you're doing great work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today on Studio 14 and learning about all of our community liaison programs and projects coming up, working to just have a healthy City of Fort Collins.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.